Welcome to this flight of the Retail Pilot. I'm your host, Ken Pilot, former CEO and current brand advisor, retail tech investor, and board member. I'm thrilled to share with you the insights from some of retail's leaders and legends, as well as my perspective on retail today. This podcast is sponsored by the following. Bluecore's software solution turns anonymous online shoppers into known customers and repeat customers. Bluecore enables retailers to personalize and optimize their email, SMS, and site marketing campaigns by delivering targeted and relevant messages based on where every customer is in their journey. Bluecore replaces annoying high-volume messaging with high-value messaging. Customers include Alo Yoga, Neiman Marcus, and Gap. Happy New Year and welcome to this week's KPOV. Today is January 15th and a couple of thoughts about the upcoming year. 5 things that I would be looking to do if I were still in an operating role going into 2024. Number 1, make sure you've got the right product. Great design will always win and trumps everything else that you're doing. Number 2, creating a strong and compelling marketing message. What is the emotional connection to the customer that your brand has? Number 3, getting the right team in place. I know, kind of an obvious one, but this is the time of year to make sure that those who are on the bus should be on the bus. Number 4, your tech stack. There's got to be at least 3 specific areas where you can improve your technology. Identify those areas, fix them, and move forward. And number 5, speed to market. Nothing more important than cutting time out of your supply chain to get the right product in front of the customer. And while doing all of this, make sure you are having fun doing it. Happy New Year. Today's guest on the Retail Pilot is Sharon Price John, who has served as president and CEO of Build-A-Bear Workshop since 2013, where she has led the turnaround and redefining of the multimillion-dollar company. After graduating from the University of Tennessee, Sharon worked in the ad industry in New York City, earned an MBA from Columbia University, and managed iconic kids brands at Mattel and Hasbro, served as president of Rite Children's Group, which led to her taking the helm at Build-A-Bear. Sharon is on the board at Jack in the Box and on the executive committee of the Toy Industry Association board. She has been named to the University of Tennessee's top 100 alumni of the last 100 years. In March 2023, she was named 6 on the Forbes 20 Customer-Centric Companies Led by Women. Recently, Sharon has authored and published the book, Stories in Heart: Unlock the Power of Personal Stories to Create a Life You Love, which has achieved impressive success since its release in 2023. Sharon has 3 children and lives in St. Louis with her husband, Russ. Welcome to the Retail Pilot. I have with me today Sharon Price John, is the CEO of Build-A-Bear, and it's only befitting that we have the CEO of Build-A-Bear, not because it's the 25th anniversary of Build-A-Bear, but we're in the toy and Christmas season. So what better person to have than Sharon? Sharon, welcome to the Retail Pilot.
Thanks so much, Ken. Really appreciate it.
Well, it's great to see you. We were together, probably sometime last year, maybe out in LA, or I think a conference. Had a chance to meet.
Conference somewhere.
I was motivated by your speech, and we'll get into that in a bit. But just love you to share with everybody your journey, how you got into this industry.
Well, it depends on which industry you're talking about, Ken. Am I in the toy industry, the retail industry, the experience industry, the gifting industry?
Yes.
Or all the above?
Yeah, you're in that space. You're in what makes people want to shop and buy.
Yeah, so that also could be the marketing industry. And if we include that, that started a long time ago. I started my career in the advertising business shortly after graduating from college. I moved to New York City and worked at DDB Needham as an account executive and worked my way up on that side before getting an MBA from Columbia because it was handy. It was right there in Manhattan. And then I want to, this is kind of sad, but I didn't really want to work at the places that tend to interview at Columbia: investment banking, venture capitalism, a lot of management consulting firms, a little bit of pharma. I'm like, I want to have fun. Not that that's not fun. Plenty of my
That's
friends think
serious
that's
stuff.
fun. Don't
That's
get me
serious.
wrong. But I'm like, I'd rather work at Mattel. I called them and ended up working on Barbie, and I got bit by the toy bug, which was great. But it was toys and fashion because I started out on the Barbie fashions business. I ran the Barbie fashions division and then, moved up on the doll side and then worked on the Disney business. And then they moved me to Paris. And I mean, it was just a great, great, great ride. But it was that little bit of fashion background that I think probably helped me think that I like fashion. So somewhere along the ride, after becoming the head of the US toy division of Hasbro some years later, I took the leap to vertical retail in Rite at part of the Wolverine Worldwide group. It's really fashion footwear company, and turned that around and really got the bug for vertical retail. But I don't know if I could have acclimated as quickly if I hadn't been in the wholesale business and, really working with, for the Toys R Us's, the Targets, the Walmarts for so long, and you learn the language of retail. You have to do your job well. And so there was a lot that made sense to me, but they hired me specifically because they felt like I had strong branded knowledge and the ability to understand the dynamic between the kid and mom, or kid and parental, or kid and guardian marketing. That there's a real lifetime value proposition that you have to navigate effectively, of creating something that kids love and moms trust.
I had a stint in the toy space, a rather unsuccessful one, but one that maybe captures a moment of time before you became the CEO of Build-A-Bear. I launched a company with a friend called Robot Galaxy, and we did this in 2007 through 2009. We actually positioned ourselves as the Build-A-Bear for boys. We opened 3 locations, including a location in Toys R Us, very experiential, very much built around birthday parties, allowing boys to build and assemble, create their own robot, play games with them. We had online game, a comic book, but then went straight into 2008, 2009, which wasn't the best time for many retailers, including us. And although we had a term sheet with Disney and a few good conversations with Maxine Clark about possibly doing something with Build-A-Bear, we had an exit, and it wasn't the good exit. We just exited without any money behind us. So wasn't that successful, but I saw that you had looks like one shot at doing something on your own as well when you were with Checkerboard. And
Yes. Well,
you
that's my company. That was my company with my husband, Checkerboard Toys. And we started that after I was at VTech for a little while, the toy division of VTech. And I still had a little bit of the fashion doll bug. And one of my favorite brands as a child, Dawn Dolls, which was a 6.5-inch fashion doll from the 1970s, actually launched in 1970, was the number one selling unit doll, I believe, of 1971. The only, at the time, up until that time, of which would have been 1990. Well, where am I? 1997, 1998. No, it's later than that. Sorry about that. I'm too old now, Ken. I can't even get my decades straight. But somewhere in there, that it was, up until that time, it had been the only doll to outsell Barbie in the unit volume. And we were coming up on, a 30th anniversary that made some sense. And to leverage that, there's not anyone in the toy industry that doesn't know how to get at least a couple of good years out of any anniversary, or you're not worth your weight in marketing. So we did that, and that was successful. And we tested it, a little girl's more modern version, shortly thereafter at Toys R Us, and they wanted it chain wide for the holiday. In the classic way, we had our container full coming across the ocean just in time for, unfortunately, the September 11th disaster. So, I'm usually very careful here to not overstate the negative impact on us compared to the devastating situation for so many that's completely not comparative. But, we had our order canceled. And that's a sobering moment for, I wouldn't have said it then, but I'll say it now, a young couple kind of getting started. I didn't feel young at the time, but I look back on it now and I'm like, oh my gosh, we were just kids in our 30s trying to pull something off like this and trying to rethink what am I going to do with all of this inventory and how am I going to manage through this. And it was a big learning opportunity. I would say the experience of that, as well as, how we managed it afterwards, just a significant evolution for me as a business person and just a human to kind of like get through that, work through it. I mean, those are big things that happen in people's lives. And particularly with your marriage or kids, and we moved. That's why I ended up at Hasbro. I mean, I really would think I'd rather be in a great big company.
Well, there is some security to be said for working for a large company that has deeper pockets than when you're doing something on your own. I totally get that. I've been on both sides, and
Yeah.
in some ways, I'd rather be an intrapreneur than an entrepreneur.
Yeah, but it was that entrepreneurial experience, I think, that was a big part of how I was able to do so well at Hasbro. I mean, I went from the vice president of what was left of Tiger Electronics after the Furby was no longer around at that point, that we brought it back even when I was there, and now it's back again, in a classic toy cadence. But, Tiger had significantly declined, and I was brought in to run that division. But I went from that until the head of the US toy division and the head of global preschool in less than 7 years. So there's really that experience of wearing so many hats, of really understanding the entire supply chain, the entire everything. It was a great experience. It's hard for people to look back on things like that and find the good in it. I get that. But usually people ask me, so, what do you think about failure? And I say that I don't think you should label it as failure until you get a few years on it. Don't label it. It's just a thing until you label it. And all I'm asking is that maybe you don't know what it is yet. So don't waste your time naming it. Just move on.
Out of adversity, a lot of opportunity is created. I think I've certainly experienced that through my career. I still experience it, but now I do like the idea of just labeling those failures as things and get around and calling it failure later. I'll have to let my wife
Or
know
not.
that those are
Or
things.
maybe one of the best things that ever happened to you. So, what did you do after your Robot Galaxy? Like, where did that lead you? When you pull the string and look back, how do you put those links together?
Yeah, I had to take a step back, take a deep breath, figure out which direction to move. And I actually went back to working for a company again. I went to work for ABC Carpet and Home, where I was president, and kind of started my career in a new sector, which was home. But that opportunity probably would not have been there had the Robot Galaxy gone in a different direction. So sometimes it's just, as you know, refocusing, gaining your compass, and figuring out what it is that really excites you. And I loved working in the home space. So it was a great, great opportunity. But there is something very exciting to building something from scratch. And I've had that opportunity a few times, both with working within larger companies and then doing it on my own, which clearly you've done as well.
By the way, ABC, one of my favorite stores in the whole wide world, not exactly what it used to be right now, but back in the day, you could get lost in there for hours.
It
And
was
right there, on the lower, so almost the Lower East Side, not quite, but
the epitome of experiential retail. You really could walk through that store for hours, potentially not buy anything, but certainly be inspired by the creativity, the design, the product, etc. It was really a pretty incredible story while it lasted.
no, I loved it.
You've been with Build-A-Bear for 10 years. Describe the state of the place when you first arrived.
Well, Build-A-Bear was, iconic already, but struggling, not unlike for some of the reasons that Robot Galaxy struggled. That time period right in there of 2008, 2009, very difficult economically and from a macro perspective. And at the same time, malls were really struggling. Retail overall was struggling. It was followed very quickly by really, as I'd say, a significant rise of a shift to e-commerce. And so there were a lot of things that were making it a little more difficult than it had been in the past. And so that was about an 8-year run of contracting profitability and a little bit of up and down on sales, but mostly on a long-term trajectory down to the 2012 full fiscal year, where it was, and some of this was write-offs and write-downs, but a $49 million loss on less than $400 million retail, which is pretty rough. So it was a full bore turnaround. I had done that already with Stride, right? So kind of felt like I knew what levers to pull. But interestingly, the company didn't have any debt and it still had some pretty good cash flow. So when you sort of read through it, you're like, I probably have 3 years. I got about a 3-year runway to get this going in the right direction. Do I think I can find enough money to make that, find enough margin, find enough opportunity, there's a lot of things that you generally do when you're looking at kind of a spreadsheet that you go to, their go-to places to get money off of every link of the value chain. And by doing that, as I started in the middle of 2013 and it was already $6 million behind, we were able to finish that first year profitably and pay out a bonus to the organization for the first time in multiple years. And that helped me get the organization to believe in what I was saying from a strategic perspective. But the thing that really, I think, empowered the organization to change, because that's the hardest part. Strategy is actually not the hardest part. It's getting people to change behavior and believe in a different outcome. That's the hardest part, and take the right actions over and over again. And they have to kind of have the wherewithal to do that. And the thing that did that was this innate love for the company. They were afraid at the beginning to change what they were doing because they were afraid we were going to lose the heart of the organization. I mean, like it or not, turnaround people don't have sometimes the best reputations about what they're going to come in there and do.
And also, I think, Sharon, just to put it in perspective, you were replacing the
The
founder
founder.
slash CEO.
Yes.
So Maxine Clark had started the company, I guess,
Fair. Yes.
14 years prior, and this was her baby. And now you're coming in to reinvent.
That's exactly right. Although I will just clarify one choice word. No one replaces Maxine Clark. She's irreplaceable in every sense of the word.
But
She's really a remarkable
company today,
person.
correct? She's
Yeah,
still
she was on our board for many years. She's an emeritus now, but yeah. And we're in touch, and she still comes to the board meetings, and she is engaged as ever and loves this brand and loves the company and loves our team. So it's a very amicable relationship. But yeah, it was difficult to get people to want to come along this road that was going to require us to change a lot of our activities and let go of a lot of the preconceived ideas, because they had enjoyed so much early success, and so much of their energy in the past few years was focused on trying to replicate what they had done to create that success 7, 8, 9, 10 years earlier. But the world had changed. This is not unusual. This is actually a pretty common thing. But when you had grown as rapidly as they did, I mean, it was a pure fad from 1997 for a few years. It was a great run. It's hard to put good processes in place when you're trying to chase the upward trajectory. So the minute that you kind of hit the first road bump, the money stops, like you're not operating with the sort of margins that you need to make it through the tough times. A lot of companies have, in a normal environment of where they have like what you would call a normalized growth curve, there's a leveling off period where you get to then focus on the bottom line for a while. They did not have the luxury of that, right? So we had to do it very, very quickly and to get this thing back going the right way. But at the same time, then the whole world had changed. So we've been on a very, very long, long journey of upgrading the entire infrastructure, from IT infrastructure to the entire store infrastructure. It was very hard because you're on super long leases. You can't just rip that out. It's hard to change the retail footprint quickly. The whole rent structure, like there's not a thing we haven't touched at this point.
Well,
So,
it's interesting. You said one thing, and I just want to go back. The first year you were there, you were able to take the company from a losing situation to a profitable one, and also
yes.
provide a bonus that hadn't been realized by employees in quite some time. What was it that you did in that year, or the opportunity that you pursued to get the company there?
Well, I did pull a lot of those levers that I talked about. Some of them are, how are we using our marketing? Is it an immediate return? What's the investment? Stop for, what I would have called frivolous spending. We stopped doing some of the remodels on stores that weren't paying out, like, classic stuff. As we got closer to the end of the year and we started to see that this is possible, I did a speech that was about, being very conscientious of spending across the board. We did a hiring freeze, like all of these things that are happening. I'm like, here's why. I shared with them that the board had approved before I started, at the beginning of the year, it's in the reporting, that if they needed $1 profit to get a bonus that year, they were just trying to get them to return to profitability. Just trying to, I mean, I could see why they created that goal from the loss of the previous year. Like that would be a big win, right? And I did like a whole thing on stage. I'm like, guys, do you realize that? All we have to do is make $1. $1. That's it. $1. And you get about just $1. And I said, do you know how much money we generate? Like, 300, almost 300, $400 million. Let's think about it. $400 million bills falling from the sky. And all I'm asking you to do is catch one, just one. And I had $1, right? And I'm like flailing around, like pretending I'm in like one of those big, like boxes with dollars
Mhm.
flying around. You got to catch $1 and you get a bonus. Let's think about how many ways you could catch that dollar and think about it and hold your buddies accountable. Who wants to be the person that spends that last dollar on the pizza that stays a half uneaten in the conference room? Who wants to be the person that spends that dollar on a new stapler? Who wants to be the person that spends that and they're like, yeah. So there was a guy that stood up, a very charismatic guy. He's like, don't spend my dollar. It was hilarious and it became a joke. And we turned that into like a screensaver. And
Was
it
that,
just,
was that your CFO who got up and screamed that?
no, it was not.
Oh, that's a good story. So you're pursuing that, you're moving to profitability, things are going well. Going to take you right to the pandemic because I can't imagine a business being more challenged by the pandemic. Actually, I could. I was also an investor in another business that was as challenged, but by the pandemic as Build-A-Bear. How did you survive the pandemic when clearly, I believe your online business was not as important to you as many others? This is Build-A-Bear is experiential. It's in the store. It's creating. It's leaving with what you have created, and you've now closed all the stores. How did you survive that period?
Almost like anything with that kind of just something that was completely unplanned, unplannable, to work your way through that is a little bit of luck and a little bit of skill, right? There on the luck side, and you could say that it wasn't total luck, but the timing I would offer up was fairly uncanny. We had just signed our deal, an expanded deal with Salesforce to really pump up our abilities online on how to seek out and communicate the loyalty, all of this kind of stuff. And we had just completed and flipped the switch on a new warehouse management system that was going to enable us to buy online, ship from store for the first time in the history of Bill. I mean, seriously. So those were very fortunate things. The other very fortunate thing was that we were very early to identify that Baby Yoda, as he's now commonly known, was going to be like a massive hit, like from The Mandalorian. The first time I saw the episode, I called my head of merchandising, and her family happens to be big Star Wars fans as well. And we're like, get on it. And we snuck Baby Yoda in that the kind of the last shipment before Chinese New Year. Like we got it right into like the last production run. And so we had like all of this inventory, went very long on it. And right when we started to hear about this thing that was happening in China, we made a call to not ship our big inventory out to stores. We're like, something weird is going on here. So we kept Baby Yoda in our warehouse. And then it happened. We had 2 weeks in, they made the decision that for some crazy reason, teddy bears are not essential. So we had to shut down all of our stores. And we had a 48-hour period around the world. And we shifted all of our time, effort, and energy to driving our online sales, which at that point, you're correct, we're not as big as a percentage of business as we now have grown them to be. And we're able to utilize the baby Yoda as a big catalyst for us to ship all this products out from online. And it was our only source of revenue. Now, for a while there, we kept having what we called the COVID meetings every morning, Saturday and Sunday included, going through, will not believe the line items. In fact, I asked the company, the team at the end of that year to go through the painful process to try to outline everything we touched that year for posterity. And we have that deck to this day. It's a remarkable deck because you can't possibly remember everything that you did. And we did it. And I included it in my own the assessment to the board for the end of that year to just understand the way we came together as a team. But probably about the second weekend, I said, I'm not having another COVID meeting. They're like, we can't not have COVID meetings. We have to meet. We've got to go through everything. I mean, it's from HR to PR to sanitization to process at the warehouse to, I mean, it was just constant change. And I said, I know I don't want to not have a meeting. I just want to call it the success meetings from now on, because I want us to stop thinking about, oh God, what are we going to do in COVID? I want us to start thinking about, hey, we don't have to worry about that thing that takes up about 90% of our time, effort, energy, and mind share. What would you do with all of this time? And we decided that we would really, really focus on about 5 different things that had been pipelining from a technology side to enable our website at a level that we'd not really been able to participate. We pulled those forward about a year and a half and did them all in about 3 or 4 months. And then by the time we were able to open the stores back up, we shifted to buy online and ship from store and buy online, pick up from store. And it really unleashed a lot of power for the company. The 2021, 2022, and now expected 2023 are all 3 record-breaking years in a row.
And one note I saw in your last earnings call that I think everyone should be aware of is that through the first 3 quarters of this year, you've done more revenue than you did in 2019. So it just goes to really show
That's correct.
how strong the business is today, coming off what was an incredibly challenging period, and for what many may think of as a brand that had just gone quiet. But you're far from quiet. And I also noticed you have 3 very important initiatives that would be a good way to take us forward in this conversation on how you're moving the business in the future. And those initiatives include additional locations, improving the digital experience, which you've talked about, and reinvesting in the business. If you will unpack those one by one, let's talk about where Build-A-Bear is going with each of those initiatives.
Yeah, I just do want to make a correction. We're just a few dollars short. It's like 337 million or 339 million. So it's not more business in those first 9, but pretty much this. Hey, the point's still there, but because it's numbers, I'm going to be super.
We have to be accurate. We're a public company. We
correct.
don't want any suits, but on track to do about 500 million in revenue this year.
Short of that, based on our guidance.
Okay.
Not quite. Yeah, at the midpoint, it would not be there. It would not be at 5. So of the range, but to the 3 strategies that we identified, yes, we wanted to evolve what we call our experience locations. And we've done that, not just changing the footprint. We have so many varieties of stores now. This is not a cookie cutter approach. We're solving for all sorts of footprints, all sorts of types of experiences. We have different models now. It's not just the owned and operated model. We have a partnership model that we do with everything from Great Wolf Lodge to Kalahari to Carnival Cruise Lines. We have temporary pop-up shops that we do with Gaylords every year as an example. And we have franchise businesses that we do in countries from Australia to South Africa to Chile. So we've evolved the model significantly. We also updated the format. We have a discovery format that changed up the way we look, refreshed it, created a new, more efficient, larger stuffer, pulled it up to the front of the store, creating in-store theater. We went through an entire research process of how to improve the efficiency. That stuffer this is silly stuff, but this is like down in the details of retail, in that the stuffer has 3 nozzles versus what a 2 nozzle stuffer. So you're improving your efficiency, your throughput. And you're like, why does that matter? Well, it matters at Build-A-Bear on Saturdays and Sundays. If you've ever been, that's a line. So, we have to think through the height of turnover, how much more quickly we can get people through the process, but still give them that one-on-one experience, that very special, memorable experience that ultimately is the crux of the creation of the value of the brand. So all of that, including the renegotiation of every single lease as they came up, one at a time. The most frustrating possible way to renegotiate leases is one at a time. But you know what is not only frustrating for us, it's frustrating for our partners. But there's kind of some wisdom in that.
Let's take a quick break with a word from our sponsors. Predict Spring is a global point-of-sale platform live in 22 countries. The platform includes mobile POS, endless aisle, fulfillment, inventory management, and clienteling, creating a true omni experience for customers and associates. Predict Spring powers Suit Supply, Converse, Lovesac, Decium, Janie and Jack, and Bouclair. Breakfast helps brands like HelloFresh, Perfume.com, and QVC increase revenue across Meta and TikTok by creating hundreds of user-generated content video ads. The Breakfast Creator Network, with over 5,000 strong, produces original content that is authentic to each platform and built to drive performance, all done in as little as 3 weeks. Check out breakfast.io. That's BRKFST.io. So we're at your height of stores, which I assume was probably going into COVID. How many stores did you close, reposition, get out of during the COVID period?
Actually, not that many, because we had already done all of that work. We did not contract significantly. On our owned and operated. Some of my international franchises did, because India and China, as an example, were hit incredibly hard. And so that was a little bit of a different story. We really were not in a situation where we needed to close the stores, but we did renegotiate a lot of our leases during that time period.
That's what landlords were used to doing during that time period. I'm sure they'd rather renegotiate than close, as many companies, as you know, are closing and never.
Right. I mean, we were one of the retailers in the malls, for example, that our partners were willing to bet on. They were betting on that we would survive, and for us, we believe, as do our partners, that we're an important part of the solution for malls. We're not the problem in malls. Like, depending on how you slice and dice the research, between 60 and up to 80% of the visits to Build-A-Bear are planned. I create traffic. I don't just rely on the mall to create my traffic. We drive the traffic, to our own stores. And that traffic, I don't know if you have kids, I have 3, they're grown up now, but, trust me, when we, loaded up the SUV and went to the mall for Build-A-Bear, we didn't just go to Build-A-Bear and leave. We spent money, that's pick up a whole lot of clothes at this and that store and go out to eat at Rainforest Cafe and do all sorts of other things. That's an outing once you get all 3 of them trapped in an SUV. And that is the way that people act still today. So we're a good partner to help be the future of the evolution of retail. And, and then now being very, very omni-channel, in that we're trying to create the lifetime value between online and in store. We generally over-index on people that shop both. But one of the ways we were able to really grow that online business that was incremental was the recognition of being multi-generational. Because we crossed our 20th anniversary by that point, we appealed to, a teen and a tween and an adult. And not just to bring their children back, which is common, because we love to share things with our children that we loved. That's a very classic marketing acknowledgement. And so that was certainly happening. but we were just nostalgic to them, and they wanted to love adults and teens love when we mash up our brand with other popular brands, other popular licenses, very collectibles, maybe their favorite NFL teams. I mean, it's kind of all over the place. And we launched a microsite on our website called the Bear Cave that's age gated, where we got to then do licenses that, were maybe based on a movie that I wouldn't ever put in the store, like Deadpool. But the Deadpool bear is hilarious. So, a lot of fans of those types of films where we were able to appeal to somebody that had grown up with Build-A-Bear, literally grown-ups now who want that kind of product. Now, at the same time, what was happening was the emergence of the adulting trend, which has been, really great experience for us to be on the front end of that wave. But so the website becomes over indexes to that older consumer that's now 40% of our sales, 40.
Your e-commerce is 40% of your sales?
No, our teen and adult consumer is 40% of our sales. Our website fluctuates between 15 and 20% of our sales based on a quarter, which isn't that, that's pretty common, that about a 20% penetration.
Yeah, no, that's impressive.
Apparel is about where people are shooting, right?
Yeah.
But it over indexes with that adult consumer. So more of the sales go to adults online than do to kids. Well, they all do because kids don't have credit cards, but we try to calculate the end user. At least not all kids have credit cards. And then in the store, that over indexes with our core consumer. But as a part of this adulting thing, and this is more, incidental, our bear builders, our associates tell us this, there are more and more and more teens and adults coming in and building it for themselves, not with a child. So that's really fun. We'd love to be a part of that trend.
I would have to guess that staffing and hiring would be, if not the top challenge in stores, definitely number 2. Am I right, wrong, or otherwise?
Well, I can see how you would logic your way there based on everything you're reading about the challenges of turnover and store associates and malls, but we comparatively have a great retention rate. We have tended over the years to not pay at the lowest rate because we really need talented individual. Not that you're not talented otherwise, but it's a little bit of a different skill set that's required
Actually,
yes, overtly engage with guests, be able to maneuver between the adult and the child at the same time, get down on the level of the child, create that. Stuffing machine is considered heavy machinery. So there's some rules and laws around the operation of the machine. So you can see why our bear builders are, sometimes they're aspiring actors, sometimes they're, school teachers or kindergarten teachers or part-time daycare workers, or, it's a really unique and just well-respected group of individuals that it's almost like we self-select, right? If you're coming to apply for a job at Build-A-Bear and you're like, I really don't want to be happy all day and I just don't like kids. Come on. Why did you pick up the piece of paper? Why did you go online? So, they're kind of using their own filters. And so we end up with a lot of applicants for each application, so because of that, they really want to work there. And we do our very, very best to make it fun. The days go really fast and you're making people smile all day. It could be worse.
Well, I know you had one great people person leading your stores for a number of years, Roz Potts Johnson, who I had the good fortune of working with at Gap. And now I believe she's your chief people officer. So
that's right. That's because she's so good.
She's great. The leadership, the energy. She was a star at Gap, so I'm not surprised she's a star in your organization.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit now about the digital experience. You spent a fair amount of time, but what else digitally are you doing to keep this brand moving and evolving?
Oh, there is not a piece of this company, a sector that is untouched by, the digital transformation, and that will continue. This is one of those things where you never, ever, ever get it done because there's always new technology, always new opportunities. But we really spent those first few years of rebuilding the infrastructure. We couldn't put some of the things that needed to happen stack it on top of what was totally outdated by that point.
And you're talking your tech stack in general, you were on
100% had to be upgraded, updated across the board. And not just so I could put a new e-commerce platform up, but from our accounting platform to our warehouse management system, as I mentioned, to updating the loyalty program, to installing a journeys program, to upgrading the CRM, to, installing, some of the Einstein, some of the processes where it's like some, not AI like it is right now. I mean, that's like a whole new thing that we're just now talking to Salesforce about, where should we first lean in, or how could we optimize certain things and automate other things. So this is really, from a all new, speaking of Roz, all new HR system to, even the complexities today of payroll, given how many differences there are from state to state, county to county, municipality to municipality, on from sick leave to time off to, minimum wage. That's a complex process, the data, and it changes constantly because of laws changing constantly. I mean, you have to have technology to run a company of any material size today.
And you've made some pretty sizable investments in the store. You're up and running on a new POS solution.
This is our second upgrade on that since I've been here.
And just can you share which, in terms of platforms, if you could, maybe what you're doing with e-commerce? Are you on Salesforce Demandware? Is that your e-commerce platform?
No, but we did just do an upgrade to improve the speed of the site with SFRA. So, that's more of a site speed. We worked with Deloitte Digital to help us reinvent the website, trying to make it a little more intuitive. We still, that's still a constant, you're just reading data constantly. The three main things we try to focus on is the intuitiveness of the site, particularly the landing page, the checkout and ease, and try to, decrease some of the friction there. And then the site speed. And that was like sort of like our last, we were still a little slower than we wanted to be. And we have some complexity associated with it because we have different kinds of consumers that want to go through a different journey, if you will. And I don't mean a journey like I'm intercepting you and sending you emails out, that kind of journey. I'll call it a different experience. Some of the guests want to, there's straight mobile. About 80% of our business is now mobile, and they really want to thumb click and scroll right through as few engagements as possible. And so we have something, we bundle a lot of these Pokemon things or Hello Kitty things where it's the fastest possible click through to get that to purchase. And then we have people that want to go through the entire sort of a bear builder configurator where they scroll through the animals, then they scroll through all the outfits, then they just add a sound, and then they put some shoes on. I mean, they really kind of want to walk through it like they're walking through the store, so we have to have different, almost like roads that people can choose to go on, which adds complexity to our site so that we meet the needs of our guests.
I did notice when I was playing around on the site that it doesn't look like Build-A-Bear has the ability yet to allow someone to actually create and dress their choice, their bear, if that's what they choose, to see what they're wearing as they pick the clothing out. Is that something on the roadmap, or is that?
It sounds simple, but it's highly complex.
I would.
And the reason it's highly complex is because if you think about the exponential iterations, when you have, even if it was, and we have more than this, 100 furry friends, 1,000 outfits that can be mixed and matched, and, tops and bottoms, you add all the accessories, whether they're glasses or this, like the iterations are endless already. If you add a sound, like it's just, I don't know that there's an algorithm that we could capture it all.
I'll have to find that and bring that to you. That'll be
that'd
be good. Yeah. You got open to listen for that one. So if we move on to the last category where you're reinvesting in the business, where are those investments? Where are those bets being made? How would you kind of break it up between maybe the creative side of the business and the less sexy, more the operational side of the business?
From a capital spend perspective, outside of maintenance, most of our investment is in the growth of the stores, although what we've done is through this partner operated model is very cap light. It's very beneficial. And what we're doing under those circumstances is we're selling them our fixtures. In a sense, they end up with something like just the rights to utilize the brand, and they buy the product from us, and we take a wholesale markup on that product, and we train their people. right? But we are currently expanding in our owned and operated space too, which does require capital. The next biggest space, in this kind of world is, marketing investment. And that marketing investment is also inclusive of some entertainment that we've been developing.
I hear you're producing movies now too. We have Gliston and the Merry Mission, which off to a good start.
Yeah. I mean, well, Glisten and the Merry Mission is based on a multi-year property that we have. It's our own intellectual property that we created to be able to market Christmas at Build-A-Bear as an essential event, part of a tradition. So people were coming to the mall and going to see Santa or whatever the process is, and the kid would want to go to Build-A-Bear. Children are like, go to Build-A-Bear. And they're like, you know, we're waiting for, we'll get that under the tree. We'll wait. And they're like, oh my goodness. When we would do this research, we're like, they're actually coming all the way to the mall, at holiday and avoiding Build-A-Bear. And if you look at the traffic data, we were what I would call getting our quote unquote unfair share of the traffic increase during the holiday. And that was why, right? So what we did with the creation of the reindeer and the reindeer story and Glisten and the Merry Mission is to make sure that we're part of the celebration as well, not just the best teddy bear to get under the tree or the gift card that's in the stocking, which is still true. That's why we have a great week after Christmas generally, because people are coming in with their gift cards, and there are essentially no returns of teddy bears, in case you ever wondered. Can you imagine? I mean,
No.
that's just, and what a gift in retail, right? That's like not what we worry about. But now we're a part of family tradition at the holidays. And so we wanted to bring the intellectual property to life with characters and create a living, breathing sort of theatrical and now digital demand product for them.
So with the strong marketing behind you, still plenty of runway that you see for continued growth for the brand. One thing I found interesting when I was reading through your last earnings call notes, just the growth or the success that you are getting from your international partners, which I guess you put under your wholesale banner. It looks like that part of the business, and perhaps maybe it contracted more, as you alluded to, during COVID with overbuilding of stores. But now it looks like that's certainly a real growth vehicle. I think I saw a growth there somewhere in the 30 to 40% range on your wholesale/international partnerships. How many stores are there that are partners of Build-A-Bear today that aren't owned and operated?
So it's a little bit of a complicated number there. So there's a lot to unpack in that. So we have a couple of operating line items, and the commercial revenue includes partner operated franchise and our entertainment. And so, but when I say partner operated, those stores can be domestic or international. Most of our franchise, or actually all of our technical franchises, are international. And then the entertainment is in there as well. So that's a little bit of a hodgepodge, that commercial revenue. So that wholesale number is where the partner operated is. But so those stores are US based as well, but we don't own and operate them. That's the perfect example of like Great Wolf Lodge. So, but internationally, yes, we are seeing some reinvestment, and we opened our first store in continental Europe in a long, long time, just a few weeks ago, and actually opened the second one just last week, which was post the earnings call. So news for you, Ken, news to share. Yeah, another Italian store. And that's our second Italian location. And we feel like we have a runway, particularly in continental Europe.
Sliding down, I want to talk a little bit before we close about leadership, your style, because I can sense the energy, and clearly you've been doing this for a while. It seems like you have almost a patent on a certain sort of style that can not only turn companies around, but also make them extremely successful. There's a quote that I read somewhere where you said, "Don't compartmentalize work and life. Do what you love." Maybe you can elaborate on this a little bit more, because I think this would give us a better understanding of who you really are.
Well, those are kind words. And I'd probably say a generous overstatement. But for the fun of the interview, I will continue. I just feel like that everything we do all day is life. This is life.
So, from a work balance, people always talk about, well, work balance, it's good to separate this and do that.
Why can't you have fun at work? Why can't work be fun?
I have fun at work every single day. I'm
I
asking,
do too. And maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I like, I don't know. Let me put it this way. I work hard to have fun. And a lot of that is happy is a choice, and of course there are extreme situations where I am not going to get, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm not trying to say anything that is unfair, circumstances beyond people's control. Absolutely. I mean, and I am empathetic to that kind of service. But we're talking about a large swath of the population where, your minimum needs are probably being met. And once those needs are met, there is some latitude in the way you want to embrace or not embrace life. And what is the irony of it all, at least what I've learned, and look, I've gone through the ups and downs of my career and, I've been very fortunate, but I also wasn't born at the top of the food chain either, but very fortunate, not trying to overstate anything. But it's just been remarkable to me that I believe the secret is that if you can change your attitude, the world changes. You shouldn't rely on the world to change your attitude. And the mashup of the work-life balance is, I think it's incredibly disempowering. And I just always try to choose the empowering thought, even though it might be slightly psychotic. But if it's helpful, then choose the empowering thought, right? If you can prove no different, choose the empowering thought. I'm going to choose to be empowered by saying I do not have to compartmentalize a portion of my life that represents a large amount of hours on a per day basis and say I am going to dislike all of this so I can get to the pleasure of being happy at the end of the day. And I'm also not going to do that for the first 65 years of my life. That's a choice.
I get it. Makes sense. Listen, some people, I got to get this right. Some people work to live. Other people live to work. I'd probably put myself in the latter camp because
I just live.
yeah, or just live. There you go. Maybe just live. All right. I'll take that. What would you say you're best at, and where do you rely most on others?
I will be incredibly sweeping on this. I'm not going to get down in the details of, this skill set or that skill set. I'm going to be very sweeping and say I'm a really big ideator, big thinker. I see opportunity in almost everything. I actually need to surround myself with people that go, hey, no, let's prioritize this differently. But it's not without, I dream big. I really do. It's not without practicality though, and you have to have that balance. But I could ideate all day long, but you learn over time to work through a process to find the next best idea, the next best thing. And then how do you fire people up to get motivated behind that next best thing? And I think that there is a magic in understanding that something doesn't have to be perfect, and not everything has to be the only one right idea. I do believe deep inside that a good idea executed with excellence outperforms a perfect idea not executed at its best all day long. So get on with it.
What was your best idea since coming to Build-A-Bear? And at the same time, one that was maybe a not such a good idea. Do you have a couple of examples?
Look, you could make
Come
an
on,
argument
Sharon.
in
Tell me, you
leadership.
got a big one. Big idea. What was the big idea?
Argument in leadership that all you need to do is get 51% right and you're successful. So, it just which 51% is it, right? And I think probably my best idea is just the recognition of the power of this brand, that what we had is so much trapped equity that could be monetized. And because of the way that we're woven into the lives of people, I have never in my life, and I've worked on almost every major toy brand that exists except Lego at this point, I've never in my life seen such passion associated with, oh, I work at Build-A-Bear. Oh my God, I have to tell you a story. It is without fail. And again, I don't want to mention any of the brands, but I've worked on massive brands that generate much more revenue than Build-A-Bear. That's not the reaction. Our brand is worth so much more than our company represents. And that's my mission, is to bridge that gap and create multiple revenue streams to do so. Because what we are, or what we were, was a vertical retailer that almost accidentally created a brand. And we are going through a pivot to become an intellectual property company that just happens to have one rev stream that's called vertical revenue, vertical retail. And you can build out all these other including our international franchising or outbound licensing with multiple intellectual properties, whether it's Honey Girls or Merry Mission or Promise Pets or these other intellectual properties that we've created that are designed to focus on a certain consumer set or entertainment as a revenue stream. That's fun. And then how do you turn that into a machine? So that's fun. So, I think that's kind of a big idea.
So, just to summarize, you have really created these concentric circles of opportunity around the core mission of Build-A-Bear, which was very much an experiential in-store play that appealed to the hearts mostly of younger girls, whether it was through birthday parties or through parents going to the mall, or that was the one trip, to something that actually is now global, expressed through multimedia, online, and still very much in store. But as you mentioned, different store formats appealing to different people, different genders, and I'm sure different age groups.
Different age groups, exactly.
Amazing. Last question before we get into the rapid fire. What are the 3 greatest challenges facing Build-A-Bear today?
Well, this is the double-edged sword or the two-sided coin or whatever what analogy you want to use of being an iconic brand. You always have to be incredibly careful to maintain that beloved equity. Brands are a feeling. You don't own that feeling. The populace does. Your guests do. Your customers do. The kids do. And the stewardship of that is a really important thing. So always your challenge is to assure that every decision that you're making to the best of your ability is brand enhancing, not brand depleting, because over time you could be unwittingly destroying your greatest source of value.
You ready for rapid fire?
I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer these questions, Kim, but I'll try.
I hope you get the first one. Which bear best represents you?
It's probably our classic core bear, Happy Hugs, because he's our best-selling by unit volume. He's the guy that people go to dress anyway. And catch this, he wears 1,000 hats. So, that's just me being, just kind of like being able to blend into the moment under any circumstance. So that's what I think.
Favorite holiday movie?
I have 2, old school, and now some kid will call this old school as well. The super old school is It's a Wonderful Life, for sure. And then new old school, Elf. And now Merry Mission.
What are you reading?
I'm kind of weird. I read about 3 or 4 books at once. Like I'll pick up one and then put it down and then read a little bit. So I most recently read, let's see, what was I just finishing up? Dennis Waitley is a really interesting inspirational speaker. I had listened to his tapes back in like the 90s. And he recently brought out a new book, and I remember, the tapes. And so I reread that. It says something about the power of positivity I just thought I wanted to see what he learned since then. So really interesting guy. I have been at night. This sounds really deep. Sorry about this, but somebody told me that you should just read the Tao Te Ching. So I've actually been just reading little snippets of that every now and then. And you don't read much. You just read one page and go, wow, it's deep. And then you got to put it down for a couple of days. Right? But good stuff. And then I kind of inundate myself with, business books.
Who would you most like to meet?
That's actually probably the hardest question that you have, because I can't narrow it down when you think of all living and all dead, which I'm assuming are the rules here. So on the one side, it's almost anyone that has lived or is living a really interesting life that has some mastery. I tend to really, artists, educators. I'd love to talk to them about their journey, what they've done. But then at the same time, another reason why it's hard for me is I usually I'm not an idolizer. So I think I'd like to talk to anybody who has an interesting story and is self-actualized, frankly. It's just anywhere, bar in New York. If I could find somebody at an interesting store, I'd sit down and talk to them for an hour and buy them a drink. So,
Sharon, I appreciate all of your time here. And on that, we'll land this flight of the Retail Pilot. Great to see you. Great to be on the same screen with you and just hear the amazing job you've done with Build-A-Bear and your team. Congratulations.
Ken, thank you. So much fun. And thank you for sharing your journey too. It's always fun to kind of like be able to connect that way.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's flight of the Retail Pilot. And please give us a review on your favorite podcast platform.